everybody, and a special welcome to Cathi for joining us tonight, because I know it's always a difficult time. My boys are long past the stage of years, but 6 o'clock was always feeding time at the zoo, and various other things that were going on. So we're really thrilled that you've been able to join us this evening and just talk about I guess your journey in financial services, if we could call it that. So I know many of us on the call, I'm sure, will know you, Cathi, from all the things that you do within the industry. So I just thought, by what many of us might not know is, how did it all get started? You know, we've all got a story of how we ended up in financial services, and for many of us it was kind of by accident rather than by design, if I should put it that way. So I'd really like to just start by asking, you know, how did it all start, and how did you get into financial services?
Yeah, do you know, I was thinking about it today actually, Gillian. So I think I always say I fell into financial services, as everybody does, because I think majority of people do. But then I realised I feel like I've been lying for the last 15 years, because I didn't entirely. I fell into it in the sense I didn't know about it in school and all the issues that we all know about. Nobody's aware of it as a career path. Certainly hadn't heard of paraplanning. But somebody had, when I'd finished university, I did English and business in my degree. And had no idea what I wanted to do. But somebody had actually said to me at the time, oh, I know somebody else who's received an inheritance of £100,000, which, you know, 15 years ago was like,
winning the lottery. Yeah.
And he said she's going to see a financial advisor about it. And I just remember thinking, what does that mean? What would they say? What would they do? And it just piqued my interest. I think it just made me realise that there was an entire area that was clearly going to be important throughout my life, finance, that I knew absolutely nothing about. You know, I hadn't even heard of an ISA. I immediately thought, would it go into the stock markets? I go, you know, what is it? So actually what I started to do, because back then it was the newspapers and the job adverts, as I was going through all the job adverts in the paper, I was specifically looking for ones in a financial advice firm, and saw one for an administrator in a local advice firm at the time. And kind of went along and I think it was that it kind of, the advert had said that they wanted people with, preferably with some experience. But I think that kind of passion, I guess, that came across in the interview, where I was going, I just don't know what it is, and I really want to, like, let me in and find out what this is.
Yeah.
What actually got me the job. So kind of, it was a bit of a mix. I almost fell into it, but only by hearing about it and being really interested.
Yeah, it's really a really interesting start, because I guess we've all got a story and they're all quite different. But for me, you know, when I first met you, and you probably not remember this, you gave a presentation. Here we go. I know. It was at the Celtic Manor at one of the old IFP conferences.
Yeah.
And I think, I can't remember the year, but I do think at that point you probably just set up the business, set up Parasols. I remember, I knew nothing about you clearly at that point. I remember going along to the session, expecting, and bless me, somebody very old and experienced, and thinking, gee, she's just a wee girl, you know, sorry, in the nicest possible way. And I thought, wow, that's quite amazing that somebody, A, female, and B, so young, has set up a business and, you know, is doing really well. So what was the point where you moved from
Sorry. Toilet's too dark. Let me just come put the light on. Come on, let me put the light on. You can go.
Joy's being a working mother.
Sorry.
All right.
Right.
What was the point where you thought, you know what, I'm going to do something different and be, I guess, really brave and set up on your own?
So I was working at an advice firm as a paraplanner then.
Yeah.
And I was loving paraplanning, absolutely loving it. But wasn't enjoying the firm that I was at, and I wasn't enjoying the commute that I was doing. And in uni I did English and business because I did business in college as well. I just always had this kind of I guess natural draw towards business, and I always had in the back of my mind, I'll run my own business one day. And I come across some people who just have that, and they don't know why, they just know it's there, and they don't even know what business, they just know that someday they'll run their own business. So I think I'd always had that at the back of my mind anyway. Then kind of coupled with going, oh, well, now I'm doing something that I enjoy, but not necessarily for the company that I'm doing it for. The two came together, and I thought, is this the chance to run my own business? And didn't have that one at the time. So I think it's a lot easier to make the leap when you haven't got those responsibilities.
Sure.
I
suppose, Cathi, at that point, outsourced power planning was something that was kind of quite new, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
There wasn't really anyone else doing it, you know?
Yeah, so Richard Allen, who people have probably heard of, he's got the Power Planners. Yeah. It was Paraplan Plus, I think, at the time, and he'd started it with Martin Vaughan. And what I've always loved about power planning and the community is, it's almost a cliche to say it now, but it's a cliche because it's true. They genuinely are such a nice, supportive bunch. So they had Paraplan Plus, which was one of maybe 2 outsourced firms at the time.
Yeah.
But were so happy to give me all of their time to talk through what they've done, what worked, what didn't work, talk through their charging structures. And I think kind of almost seeing somebody else do it definitely helped. It wasn't, now because I've tried running my own business, I feel more confident coming up with absolutely brand new ideas that I haven't. In fact, now I'm more excited by something that I can't see anybody else doing. But at the time, there wasn't many people doing it, but there were some, so that kind of made you think, okay, maybe there is something there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, you've had an amazing journey, because not only do you run Parasols, but you've broadened that business out. So what's been the kind of journey that you've gone through in terms of getting from Parasols to now the Verve Group?
So Parasols was just doing amazingly. The challenge I'd always had with Parasols was finding power planners, which I managed to resolve by launching our graduate scheme and training my own, which meant that for the first time I was actually starting to grow the business and keep up with some of the demand we had. And what it was actually when I was on maternity leave with the little one, so 4 years ago, I was thinking, okay, this is going really well, Parasols is doing brilliantly, what's my blockage, what's the kind of the challenge with Parasols that I need to fix? And at the time, a huge amount of our time was spent battling with the compliance teams of the advice firm. So we do their power planning, they'd be happy, their clients would be happy. You know, we were a happy little triangle, power planners, advisors, clients, and then compliance would just come in and ruin it for everyone. So that was the point while I was on maternity leave that I thought, okay, well, actually, why is compliance still like that? Why is it done that way? And kind of started to look into that. Wanted to use technology, didn't understand why there was no technology being used, why you had to, you know, sit in the office all day on a Friday and wait for the compliance guy to come around and go through your files and your spreadsheets. So started off on the journey with Apricity, but that involved bringing in, like, building our own technology to do it, which was something I'd never done before. And tech and working with developers is a special thing, as I'm learning. And to be fair, I'm very impatient. Once I've had an idea, it's kind of like, okay, is that not done? Like, why is it not already being built? So I had him in the August, and in the November I was back in the office kind of planning this business, and in my mind I was like, oh, we'll go live in January, you know, we'll build this technology in a month, that'll be fine. Actually we did go live in January, but the year after it took a full year to build it.
I always love your enthusiasm.
Come on.
Go for it. You know, what's the worst that could happen? What do you think? I mean, obviously I've set up a couple of businesses in my time, and one of the challenges I always felt was you spent too much time running the business and dealing with the VAT man and the tax man and the accountant and all that horrible stuff, rather than actually doing what I love, which was, you know, working and working with, specifically for me at that point, advisors and helping and really making a difference. And I don't want to do all the other stuff that needs to be done. Has that been a challenge for you as well?
I think I was the other way around, to be honest, Gillian. I think the businesses I've launched since, so Apricity, then the Art of Finance, then kind of bringing it under Verve Group, they've been launched as a business with people kind of doing the work, but with Parasols. I was a paraplanner and I loved paraplanning. It was October 2018. Like, I still know exactly the last time I actually sat and wrote a suitability report, because they had to prise me away from it. It would just be, there was so much that was needed, and my focus should have been on that business stuff. And I had to force myself to stop doing what I loved. And I think the downside of that was that for a lot of years, Parasols was in my head. There wasn't processes, there wasn't systems, it wasn't designed to have the 40 staff that it's got now. It was designed for me to just kind of do everything. So I had to retrospectively apply that business structure to an existing company, which is so hard. Whereas with other businesses, because I've gone into them and gone, well, actually, I've got this idea and I know I can't do everything. So what I'll do is focus on running the business and kind of getting it there and let somebody else do the doing. It's meant that I've been able to get all 4 of them off the ground. But
but maybe a bit hard to let go, actually. I watched, I don't know if anybody saw, there was a great documentary on the other night about Deliveroo, and well worth watching on catch up. I partly got into Deliveroo only because my son started to do it and become a cyclist over lockdown and stuff. But what was interesting is the guy that founded it still signs on to Deliveroo at least once a month and goes out on his bike and delivers orders. So he absolutely knows, which I thought was amazing.
I'm going to have to do some suitability reports.
You're going to have to get a suitability report done. Do you know what, Cathi, I also find really interesting is, particularly from a compliance perspective, my view always of compliance is, people with going through the file notes and checking everything, and I kind of think, gosh, how on earth have you managed to apply some technology to that kind of problem because it doesn't feel naturally, does it, for many of us that worked in the industry, that there's a technology solution to some of that? Was that quite hard to do that?
It was, and it continues to be. I think I've built a Apricity for future advisors. I think where I got to was people will join. I could kind of imagine late 20s, early 30s person coming into finance and discovering compliance, realizing it was a necessary part of the business and saying, but why can't I do that on my phone? Why can't I kind of get into sorry, just pull them off. Sorry. So I do think that is still the challenge, and actually there are some advisors that we'll talk to and they're still just like, I don't get it, compliance is they've spent decades being taught to fear compliance. They've been spent decades, it's like lockdown, isn't it, just the scaremongering of the regulator after you and you need us. So they feel they need that physical human sort of protection around them. So where I'm at with Apricity at the minute, the way I kind of describe it to the team, is the DNA of Apricity, sort of 50-50. So it's 50% tech, because actually that can do some of the heavy lifting, and why not? It's still 50% human, because that's what the existing advice market understands. The humans are humans and they understand advice. They haven't come from a compliance background. They're not there to tick a box. They're there to look at a piece of advice and see if it's right for the clients, and if not, how can we help that firm train themselves and get better at it? But I see the future DNA of Apricity to be closer to 80 or 90% tech and a much smaller human element. Why? Right, can you put them on, please, and go in the living room? But 4 businesses and a 4-year-old, it's a brilliant.
And what's the hardest?
Depends which day you ask me and how much wine I've had. Okay, right, go through that, please. Sorry.
No worries at all. But Paul's asked a question here. Is Apricity aimed then at more at next gen? Would you say?
I see the term next gen absolutely everywhere now, and I don't know if it's a bit like paraplanning, isn't it? I don't know if there's a common definition of what a paraplanner is. I think everybody's got their own interpretation. So I don't know what people's interpretation of next gen is. I just think it's for firms who aren't scared of compliance and who aren't scared of using tech to do something a little bit different. And there's a lot of existing firms that have been around for a long time who are just ready to try something new.
Yeah. Heather's come in with a great question. Back to her point on this transition from kind of doing to managing the business, and she's saying it's kind of where she is and it's really tricky. And how long did that kind of transition take? And have you got any tips or suggestions for her and any of us that are in that position?
I have. I'm just going to throw some chocolate at my child.
Yep, number one.
Chocolate, sorry. I
love the way she's just soldiering on and doing this, right? You know,
She did warn me, and I'm like, hey, we're all cool with this. It's informal.
That is so cool. She's like chatting, she can hear it. The change in the tone determines whether she needs to go or whether she needs to stay. And it's in moments like that I think, yeah, I haven't done that.
Girl.
I don't need to.
Do you not think we've all become a lot more tolerant of it in lockdown, though?
Absolutely.
I mean, I haven't got small children anymore, but I've got a bloody terrier who kicks off in just about every meeting I have. And I think I used to be terrified of it happening, and these days it's like, I'm sorry, that's the dog joining in.
You're absolutely
it's so human, right? You know, actually we are not this veneer of this professional person. It's like we're all human beings.
We're human.
Yeah.
But where did I learn that I thought I wasn't?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Somewhere along the line, somebody told me that shouldn't be happening. You shouldn't be doing that. And it used to then stress me out that it happened and it was out of my control. And I don't even know where I learned that myth, really.
No, just happened over time, I think, didn't it? Changed. Yeah, so welcome back.
Hi. I do think, sorry, we will come back to your question, Gillian. I think it is a huge thing, I think, to just be very human. And I think obviously this current Zoom world is making a huge difference to everybody, and actually being able to see that and to recognise with everybody that we are. But I've always been the same. Anyway, I just think the more it's a fine line, isn't it? I can sometimes fall too far into self-deprecating. But actually, if you try and pretend that everything's an absolute breeze and you're taking it all in your stride and nothing's a challenge, then it's not helping other people, because they'll just be constantly thinking, well, what am I doing wrong if it's so easy? So I'm always quite happy to say everything that I've done wrong, and it's a lot and it's constant, but it's still also think I do a lot of things right as well. So kind of I don't think anything that's not perfect is a problem. I think it's just reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So and so going back to that question on transition from doing to, I guess, managing. I mean, and I suppose most of us at some point in our careers have been at that stage. When you first become a manager, you suddenly think, oh, this is really different, and I kind of preferred doing. I remember in sales, a lot of sales managers were quite frankly dreadful, because they were great salespeople in the old days when it was called sales, not business development, and then they became managers, and it just didn't often work.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that, on transition?
I completely agree. I think my challenge was that I held everybody else to my levels. So kind of, I could work, didn't have a child, so I could work 12 hours a day and do 5 suitability reports and they'd all be perfect. So why can't everybody else? And it took me a long time to accept that wasn't realistic. And it got to the point kind of, I think it was about 12 people was my tipping point, up until about 12 members of staff. I hated it. I hated managing. I felt like all I did was spend all my time patting people on the head and motivating them. And anything I wanted to get off and do, I couldn't do. I was kind of constantly pulled back. And there was so many times where to the point where I just thought, what am I doing? Why am I growing this business? I'm not enjoying this. I'm not paraplanning. I'm not running the business. I'm not marketing. I'm literally just people attentioning constantly. And is that what I want?
Yeah.
And I can't even say that what specifically happened. I didn't bring in a manager. I didn't kind of get fun. Like something must have happened, whether it was the culture or whether the team reached a certain level of experience and training where they didn't need me as much. But I remember it got to about 12 staff and I thought, oh, hang on a minute, it's kind of got a little bit easier now. And then it kept growing and growing, and I kept almost waiting for it to come back and be horrible again, and it didn't. And not because it's
time.
There's still issues, and exactly what you said about sales. I'll see that with my people where they'll be great at their job and they'll want to progress, and people think the only way to progress is to be a manager, and then they be a manager and go, oh, I don't like this, no, it's not for me, and you have to kind of then have an awkward discussion about kind of moving it back. So it is really hard, and I've got friends with smaller businesses, and I always kind of say to them that was my magic number where it became worthwhile, and it meant that I stepped away from paraplanning, I stepped away from babysitting, and I was able to kind of to grow the business. And then that's a bit I do really enjoy, and I do get excited about kind of coming up with ideas and pushing it forward.
Yeah. Yeah, can I move on to diversity just for a bit? I will open up to questions, and I'm keeping my eye. I'm trying to multitask and keep my eye on the chat as well. But your organisation, to me, and it's not just, I don't think, because you're a woman running that business, but it always feels a quite a diverse organisation in terms of, you know, age and this, just the people within your business. It feels kind of young, fresh, and I think Emma put a comment in here in the chat that it's like, it's always kind of refreshing as well. I just feel it's like it's a really interesting business. How have you, well, first of all, I guess I'm going to cheat and have two questions. Like, as a woman in business, do you think how has that shaped the way that you've taken that business forward, if at all? And secondly, how do you keep the kind of diversity alive, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. I think firstly, it looks like a very young, diverse business, and it is, but very specifically in the context of financial services. Like, actually, outside of finance, it's probably a relatively normal balance of people. It's just that we've got such a lack of diversity in finance. And it hasn't been by design. It's been, the majority of it's been because I struggled to find power partners. We created the grad scheme. Yep. The grad scheme, and I'm not sure why, actually. I chatted with a large advice firm who said, we've also got a grad scheme, and whenever we advertise ours, about 90% of the graduates that apply are male. You've got a grad scheme, but the majority of your team are female. What are you doing differently? And I actually don't know what it is, because we're certainly not actively, our grad scheme was pitched at making finance look interesting. It was it's got WTF is a paraplanner, and it's kind of, let's talk to young people and get them thinking about finance, and it was never intended to attract a particular sex. But for whatever reason, we have almost the opposite to them, where the vast majority of our applicants, when we do our assessment days, we'll get about 12 people in, and we were supposed to be doing one tomorrow. We're supposed to be assessing 12 new grads tomorrow, and we've had to cancel it, and we've postponed it. But again, 10 of them were female and 2 of them were male, and it just reflects the volume of applicants. And it almost can go the other way. Like, I'm finding in my mind, I'm thinking I want more men, and I want more men at every part. So I've got a 100% female senior leadership team, which is lovely, but I want a man on my leadership team, because they've got different perspectives, and they'll I'm going to stereotype, but the ones that I've spoken to are naturally more risky and will maybe push boundaries and not boundaries, but kind of push the development and the growth more than I have in the past. And I think it can work both ways. And I've got an amazing team, and I'm one of the old ones. Like, I'm genuinely old in my business, and I love that, and it's brilliant, but it can almost kind of swing too far the other way. Well, it's not too far, but I think diversity in whichever way, the importance is, it's the difference and the mix of opinions and
thought,
everything that you bring into it. That's what matters.
Yeah, okay. But what's your thoughts? I mean, obviously you're really close to the advice community. What's your kind of thoughts in terms of the future of advice? One of the things that often concerns me, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I have a feeling that the regulator seems to be very keen on pushing people down this direct route. I'm just not sure. Maybe this is maybe a personal view. Often they don't feel, in terms of some of the things that they're talking about, in that they often really support the advice. Maybe that's just me in terms of some of the things I read and see, but what's your thoughts on the future of the advice community?
Oh, Sam and I were chatting today about the need for a crystal ball for this.
All right, okay. Share then.
I see the conversations that I have, and what I see a lot of is there is a lot of consolidation. There are a lot of companies that every now and again go, I think I want a little piece of that pie, and they'll kind of swoop back into the advice world, and they'll have the deep pockets, and they'll go at it, not necessarily understanding the nuances of delivering advice, what customers actually want, just kind of looking at assets and, we've got this much and we'll put this much in and we'll get this much back out, and that's it. And the conversations I've had are, the bit I guess that worries me is this belief that the FCA want that because they would rather regulate 3,000, 4,000 large firms than 40,000 small firms.
Yeah.
And the reason that worries me is, while I understand the logic of that, I believe that there's millions and millions and millions of people that need advice, and therefore you need thousands and thousands and thousands of different types of advice. It's such a personal thing, and I think the diversity again, and it's why I get frustrated when advisors are saying, well, I do it this way and you should do it too. Absolutely you shouldn't. If there was a single right easy way to give advice, it would have long ago been figured out, everybody would have done it, and none of us would have jobs. It's that personal relationship, and I hope the future is a world where these smaller businesses who appeal to different types and draw more and more people into finance and get them understanding A, how much they need it, or B, what a brilliant career it is. I'm hoping that continues to be the place, and not that just we get swallowed up into this huge consolidated number of firms that's easier to look after.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always about accessibility, isn't it? For people when they need it at the right time and based on what their circumstances and their requirements are. So it's always an interesting one. I mean, none of us have got a crystal ball, so who knows what it's going to look like. But in my book, it's always long with advice. But there you go. Oh, thank you. Right. Before I open up to a few more questions, other than me hogging everything, just because I love asking you lots of stuff, I'm really keen to explore the new initiatives that you've got, because I just think what you're doing here is fantastic, and I think it'd be great to share it with the group on tonight.
Absolutely. Here you go. He needs a drink. He needs a stegosaurus. Come here, Bubs. Okay. So the initiative came. You do, darling. You just stand up for me, please. So we were doing our live event in October, and we've done a couple of these during lockdown. And again, it's just trying to do things a little bit different and kind of go, okay, well, if we are locked down and we have to do things virtually, what can we do? Which is where they kind of came from. And as part of that, initially, what I wanted to do was a really, really, really big campaign and initiative.
Okay, like this.
Okay, let me just finish.
Then you're frozen.
Thank you, Baba. I think finance gets a bad rep outside of the industry, and I think part of that is stuff that we can do ourselves. The infighting and bitching on the blogs and kind of all of that's not okay. I think I know there's still a lot of sexism. I still experience it myself. The lack of diversity, the lack of people that external people can resonate with, and if you just constantly see middle-aged men, you're just going to think it's not for you, either as a service that you need or a career choice. So I actually have a bigger piece in mind that I want to do to tackle all of these, obviously.
Tomorrow.
Next week, I'm busy. But where I got to for kind of the launch event, the live event that we were doing in October, was thinking, okay, as much as I want to do all of this stuff, we know we're on the cusp of another lockdown. Everybody's feeling unsettled. Everybody's worried about their own businesses. I can't say to them, I had this kind of 8-month campaign that went to next June, and I just thought I can't pull people into that when they don't know where they're going to be themselves next June. That there's just too much. So I thought I'll start small, and what I'll do is it's almost like a sponsor a donkey, but it's a sponsor a trainee instead, and it's working together, getting people, because I think a lot of people in the industry know that change is needed, but kind of sit and wait for somebody else to do it. So there's almost an element of, well, do you know what, put your money where your mouth is. It's not a lot, but do it. We'll do the legwork. You can set up a direct debit and sleep at night knowing that you're making a difference. And basically the concept was getting them to do a small amount a month to cover the CII costs for a diploma for one individual. And we would do the whole campaign, which would be to attract them. And particularly I was looking at hospitality industry, who are still just on the cusp of losing, a million are going to probably lose their jobs in the not too distant future. And I kind of had this campaign in my head around, for a lot of them, they'll have been in hospitality just as a stopgap. So it's almost you've had a job, now have a career, and getting them to understand finance, get them to understand what an exciting place it can be, that they can have a career. We've got the training framework in the art of finance. We can deliver training remotely. We can give them practical skills in admin or power planning or compliance. we can do study days to get them through their exams. We just literally need the costs covered for the CII exams.
Yeah.
So what I thought was, okay, well, I'll just make it a small idea, then just became big. They just seem to do. So we are hopefully piloting it in January with 15. So people completely outside of financial services. The aim is will be what I can't do right now is ask people to offer jobs to new people, because as I say, everybody's kind of uncertain in their own business. But actually in 6 months or 12 months, when hopefully it's all thriving again, to then say, oh, now we've got 100 jobs, 200 job vacancies, but there'll be nobody to fill them. So if we're always struggling to attract people to finance because there's so many other career options that they've heard of, but right now there are no other career options because the world's upside down, it's our chance. It's our chance to go, well, we're here and we're doing something. We're actually going to offer free places to people to get them in, to start the training. We've then got details of them. So as advisors, insurance companies, asset managers, platforms, anybody are ready to recruit, they're there, they're already underway, they're already doing their exams, and kind of all together we put the work in now, but then the whole industry can kind of flourish. So that was just my side project.
I just think it's an amazing initiative, and when you first talked to me about it, it's something that the industry really should get behind and think about the benefits. The benefits are massive, aren't they, in terms of bringing in new blood into the industry, making people feel that the industry is all encompassing, if that's a good way of describing it. Yeah, we are inclusive, and it can be fun, right? It's not, I don't know, it's you often speak to young people and they just don't really see it as a career, do they? Because it just feels boring, stuffy, it's lots of numbers, oh dear. And it's not like that at all. I was asked at one point to go and speak at my old university about being a woman in finance with only an English degree. Because clearly I wasn't clever enough. I was female and I needed to have a maths degree. But there you go. It's like anything to encourage young people into the industry and to let them see that it can be fun and it's really interesting and it's got huge opportunities for people. So I was just really keen to highlight that tonight. So I think what you're doing is amazing in terms of trying to get some sponsorship, and I'm hoping that you're getting support for that across the industry, because actually the amount of money that you're talking about in terms of supporting these people is probably a rounding error for most companies, isn't it?
Really? Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, you're right. I think there's the need to get people into finance. There always, like, since I started in it, it's a conversation that we've been having. We need to attract more people to financial services, and that's never going to be more essential than it is right now, because we already were going to decline in numbers through kind of an aging advisor population and people retiring. And I think a lot of people that were maybe planning to retire in 2, 3, 5 years, who with the current crisis and the pressures it's putting on them will just think, I'll just do it now. Why am I going to fight and scrap to get out when I know I'm planning on retiring? So I think it will accelerate that. There'll be businesses who want to keep going, but just the financial pressures will stop them. So where we already had an advice gap, I can't see that gap getting smaller under coronavirus. But I do see COVID kind of giving us the opportunity to start attracting people in that we maybe wouldn't have previously.
Agree. Yeah. Right. I'm going to stop talking, other than introduce various people who might want to ask a question. So have we got anybody that wants to ask Cathi? My goodness, you've beat everybody in. Go, Rose.
I can go. Hi, Cathi. Hey. Do you know what? My first observation is, since you put the post out on LinkedIn about wine, I'm seeing more wine glasses across the screen tonight than before. So thanks for that. That reminds us that we need to drink on this session. So thank you. I guess, I suppose, coming back to the bringing together the kind of like the creating and running of your businesses, and being a woman in financial services as well. And kind of like being a role model ambassador. So I know, obviously, last year you won a number of awards and were shortlisted for a number of awards and been really successful. I'm really interested to know what your view of those awards are. What does it mean to you? And now you've won them, do you need to win them again? I mean, I've got a view on it, and I'm really interested to know what your view around like gender awards, recognition for what you do. Yeah, so I guess that's a broad question. You can go wherever you want with that.
Well, funnily enough, actually, you've influenced partly my view on awards. So they are important, and I've judged a lot of awards, and I've never felt pressure to award a certain firm, but actually I have, but I've always resisted that pressure. But it's only come up once, but it was very much well, you know, they have sponsored or they have bought tables, and no. But that was only once out of all the ones that I've judged, and actually the rest of the time it's always been very fair judging. So when I see people say I don't go in for awards because it's just all about who's bought the most seats, that's not been my experience from the judging side, which means that when I've received them, I've valued them. I've felt that we've worked hard to put a submission in, and that it's been judged impartially. And I think they are subjective ultimately, and it probably is correlated that at the point that I had a marketing team who had the time to sit and really go at these award submissions compared to me just banging something out late at night, the number that we got nominated for increased. So they are subjective, they are difficult. I've took a lot of value from them. Take more value now when my team win them, because we've got a video Holly won from the Professional Advisor Awards a couple of weeks ago, and she's been shortlisted a few times and never won an award, and she's early 20, she's been with us from uni. It's all still just a brand new world to her, and there's a video of it because obviously it was an online awards, and when they announced her name, she's so gracious, she just goes, "Finally!" It was just so kind of, it wasn't a so I love them. However, you and I spoke once, Rose, and you made the point that kind of you'd almost started winning a lot of awards and felt that the good thing to do would be to step aside and let other people win, and that almost if people just see the same names coming up over and over, it might stop them from feeling, or they might just say, Cathy's been shortlisted, she always wins, what's the bloody point? So we've actively stopped putting me forward for any finance awards for that reason, because I just think I've took a lot from them and they're wonderful, but they're not my focus now, and I would rather people were sat there going, "Finally," because it was their turn to shine and they got it. So actually the stuff that we've gone in for more recently is outside of finance, it's business awards, and that's something that I avoided previously, because getting companies outside of financial services to understand, she's got a paraplanning business, it just went so far over their head that I never bothered. Whereas actually now, if we can get national non-finance recognition, that in itself is pushing finance outside. It's getting people going, "Oh, actually, let me go and see what the Verve Group does," and kind of doing it that way. So yeah, sorry, long answer.
No, that's great. I think it's really interesting, for many people on this call, the journey you go through on awards. And you have to go through that journey, and it's not that you don't want to win or you don't want to enter, but your focus, you learn a lot and then you move forward, and it's like empowering people or looking for something different to take your brand and what you're doing for the good to something else, and it becomes less personal, isn't it? It's not about you.
Doing awards nights. They're not the same online
because you can drink, right?
It's the only time.
Oh dear, thank you for that. Samantha's got a question. Sam, do you want to come on about the initiative?
Yeah, I don't know how much you're willing or able to share, Cathy, about how much of a response you've had and how it's looking in terms of people sponsoring places for training.
I've had an interesting response in the sense that everybody thinks it's a great idea, and I've got some initial support, but it comes down to everybody's kind of going, "Oh well, who's gonna be there first? Who's gonna really push themselves forward first?" So the PFS, for example, they kind of made an immediate pledge to cover 100 membership fees to the PFS, which I'd said was very kind. However, to drop in the ocean, and actually the only money I'm asking for from advisors is to pay the CII fees. So actually, can they not do something more than just cover 1 year's membership fees? You know, could they sponsor, say, 5 trainees, by which they wouldn't need to sponsor, they just would need to not charge the exam fees for them. And when I pushed back, they've just gone silent on me and just stopped replying entirely, which I just thought was interesting. So I've got firms that are interested and are quite happy to do a small number of places, but I think everybody's almost kind of waiting to see what once that one big thing comes out, I think there'll be a lot more around it. But because of where we are right now as well with this new lockdown, that's where I thought actually I can get kind of 15 places covered, and I'll do that as a pilot in January, and then look to go kind of hopefully really big afterwards. What's the matter? Come here. I don't think the T-Rex will eat dino dinner.
Well, T-Rex is eat you.
It's a pterodactyl.
Hello.
No wave. Hi. Okay. So lots of comments coming into the chat as well. Judith, hi there. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. You made a comment into the group. Do you want to have a chat?
Well, it's just the comments on hospitality, and yeah, my business is actually in the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
And so I actually didn't get over last week. I was supposed to be there closing it. I couldn't even get over because of lockdowns and what have you, but it's brutal. It's painful. I'm trying to get every grant under the sun. I'm trying to look at every financial trick in the book. I mean, that's just a side business, by the way. What I actually do is provide technology for advisors, AI and cognitive automation. Yeah. So I wear around many hats, let's put it this way, but that's a business in Ireland, a side business. But I'm just, what the comments that you made about hospitality, yeah, I mean, I bought at the height of the market, 2007, suffered and I actually, that was the day I gave birth to my youngest son, so it was a maternity project. Crazy, just I do crazy things, and I don't quite know how I've survived, but I've got to this point, and I think if I've survived all that, but previously, you know, I'm closing my doors for the first time in 13 years. But I'm trying just to do my best to think positively, take this opportunity to rebuild, rebrand, get better, move forward, not lick my wounds, just carry on. So yeah, it was just, yeah, you're obviously, you made a point about hospitality. I'm still trying to investigate what's possible for Republic of Ireland. It's a very different system. It's kind of crazy, and you have to jump through hoops, and it's not as straightforward. But I'm feeling the pain, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, I thought, Cathi, when you introduced the initiative, when you mentioned the issues that we're facing, particularly people losing jobs from hospitality, that whilst nobody wants to see opportunities coming out of a crisis, this clearly is an opportunity for us to be out there looking at how we can support other industries, and encourage and employ people, and get maybe people just to think a little bit differently about financial services, in that they might not have thought about it before as a potential career, which for me, that's what really resonated in terms of the initiative that you've got. So hopefully you'll land the big one, so to speak, and that really sets the ball rolling in terms of getting more support from right across the industry, because it just feels like we should be doing something. We should be helping people.
I agree. I think we're very the message I'm giving to my team tomorrow when I do kind of the company update is that we are really lucky. And I know it's, Gillian, when you and I first came on the call at the beginning, we were just like, it is draining, it's absolutely exhausting. I don't get anxious easy. I'm finding that I'm very anxious at the minute. It's, it's really, really intense times. But as an industry, finance, compared to hospitality, like we're in a really, really lucky place. And we're in the place where we've got some control over it. We can do something about the impact that we have had, whereas in hospitality, that they haven't got it.
I know.
I've actually just eaten out 5 days solidly to try and to all of the local businesses I know, and I was in one today just buying coffee and banana bread, and I wasn't even hungry, but just kind of going like it's completely out of their control, and it's just horrendous to have that knowing how much it's impacting my business, because I'm used to being able to control it, when it's nowhere near as severe as them just coming in, going close down overnight, just close down again. It's awful. But I would say, Judith, actually, I just think what you've said about almost taking that time to rebuild is absolutely, I think, the best thing that, well, it's the approach that we've took. So we rebuild, we pivoted in June and went, okay, the finance community is moving online, and this isn't going to be a short-term thing. This is going to be the impact for years, that there'll be more online services than before. So we built for that. And right now, November and December, I'm trying not to get kind of too carried away with the initiative and the strategy and the big pieces, and just keep refining, just making everything work. It's all about processes. I'm doing training. I'm, tearing apart our websites. I'm bothering everybody in the business to just make everything really, really, really solid, because I think we'll have an amazing year next year. And if I don't get those foundations right now, it'll fall apart. So I think taking that time to do that, have the positivity and the hope that it will go crazy next year, that you'll be in a very different place, and then be going, I'm so pleased I used those couple of months while I could in the run up to Christmas to just get the foundations really solid. I think that's the best way to do it.
Exactly that. I mean, we were overwhelmed with staycationers over the summer. It was almost Christmas, but at the same time, it showed up all the cracks, and it made me realize, I've just been, it's been a side business, so it hasn't had my full attention. My processes are awful. My systems are awful. My chef was awful. But you can apply that to any business, and so this is why I'm using that as an example, but taking it back to the core, if you work on the business and rather than just firefighting the whole time, and that's why I'm allowing myself these next few months just to paint the rooms so we don't get complaints, just these tiny things that could have just stopped. So it was just creaking at the seams. So it's but again, that can be applied hospitality for now, but a lot of businesses can go through this whole kind of rebirth. I think if we use it as a rebirth coming into 2021, I mean, I've kind of wiped out this, use it to kind of paint and patch up, tile, whatever, but in every aspect of life, get all my finances, get all my taxes up to date, get everything, go into 2021, right, okay, leave that year behind, freaking let's get on with it, let's and just have that positive attitude. And on that, I'm gonna drink to that.
Okay. I think we'll all drink to that. Here's 2021. Can I ask you about your thoughts on just given that you're in compliance, what do you think the regulator might have in store for us next year? Any predictions?
No, I don't think they know themselves. I think the way that, I always try not to sit and criticise the regulator, because I find it very easy to just sit and criticise the regulator and to blame it for everything. And I think it is a challenging situation to try and get kind of thousands of people to all behave in a certain way. But what seems to have happened is they had stuff that was due out this year, like the annual, the assessment suitability review 2, which kind of wasn't really needed anyway, because the outcome of the last one was so good. But then they still kind of kicked it back and then cancelled it. And they just seem to be sort of constantly playing catch up and trying to work out what to do next and what to do about COVID. So I can't, they're not very proactive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So actually, in trying to predict where they are next year, I think they'll still be chasing the tail.
It kind of feels to me, rightly or wrongly, that we've all been given a bit of a breather in the last 6 months. Maybe just some of the stuff that I tend to focus on. So we tended to potentially last year go through endless rounds of papers one after the other, and you're like, whoa, we can't deal with them all. And this year, it feels a lot quieter. So whether it's like the calm before the storm, I'm not sure. I mean, for us, we are focusing, for example, on some of the MiFID II regulation, the potential inclusion of sustainability preferences into suitability is a big topic for many of us. But I guess what none of us are seeing is any real predictions of what there might be a focus on coming into next year. So I don't know if anybody else on the call has any thoughts on that.
I think the paper on property funds and liquidity, where you might need to register the sell 180 days before you actually do it is a bit alarming, because as an advisor, how are people going to be able to recommend those when you're going to say, well, we want to sell now, we've no idea what the price is going to be in 6 months? How can you include that in a portfolio? Yeah, absolutely right. Paul, on you go, Cathi, sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say the same. I just saw that Paul had said about DB
Paul said DB transfers, yeah.
As you say, in the property, and also vulnerability as well is kind of something that has been coming up. I think DB transfers, I don't know what's going to be left of it. It's just they've wrung it to shreds, and the amount of really good advice firms that we work with in Apricity who've given up their DB permissions this year, it really genuinely makes me sad, because we were doing their Fartex, they were doing great advice, they were doing everything they could, and they've just got to the point where as a business decision it didn't make sense to do it anymore, and all that means is that there's fewer and fewer options for clients, and I think that was the outcome. Obviously it's what the FCA were trying to do, but when you're seeing really good firms pulling out from the market, and I'll get asked, I don't do DB anymore, who can I send my clients to? I've got nobody. There's just nobody left. Is really sad. So I think that the property, and they've got a push on vulnerability at the moment, and actually that might be something which COVID is just going to highlight even more, because if you were considered vulnerable beforehand, then absolutely. So themes, I think, they'd be the themes, but just generally whether it's keep banging people with papers or something a bit more tangible, I don't know. Yeah, it's always a difficult one to predict, but it does feel like it's been slightly quiet this year, but who knows what's around the corner, hey? Unexpected positive the year. Get to breathe. Right, we're just short of 5 minutes to go. Any final questions for Cathi? Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on the chat because I'm surprised. No, okay. We're all okay. I absolutely agree, Amanda, in that it's so refreshing to see somebody who's focusing on the awards for the team rather than always yourself, and I think that shines through always, Cathi, when certainly when I speak to you, and also anybody within your team. What I also find is they have the same kind of infectious enthusiasm, if I could call it that. So clearly something right. Sorry? I've got a bar in the office. I get them drunk. I was just going to say it might be something to do with the alcohol, but I wouldn't like to.
I think just quickly as well, if I could just say that it's so refreshing that Cathi is you've made compliance interesting, and obviously the graduates that you're bringing through as well want to know about. And I just think, like most of us, when you think about compliance, it's like walk the other way, because probably get into an argument about what's right and what's wrong, and that it's so stereotypical, or has been so stereotypical, of the sort of person that sits in a compliance job, and you've completely bucked that trend, and that I think is in itself makes our industry great in the future, because then it means that actually someone like you can say, well, so what if there's some new regulation, because all it means is this. It doesn't, it's simplicity. And I think that's the message that I always hear from you, that it's simple, it's easy, it's a way through, and it's positive. And just how nice is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I also think with regards to power planning as well, I mean, Cathi and I were at an event last year, a power planning event, if you remember, Cathi, and there'd been a survey done, which was just amazing, because often I think, or too often the industry sees that power planning is just a road to being an advisor. Yeah, because surely you're a power planner, the next step is you must want to be an advisor. And actually for that absolutely shone through as not being the case, didn't it, from the research that had been done pre that event, where people were saying, you know what, I absolutely love my job, I love being a paraplanner, it's a valuable career, and this is what I want to do. And that just struck with me in terms of that research that had been done.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost self-perpetuating, isn't it? Because you get a lot of, I've spoken to a lot of advice business owners who are saying, you know, I don't want to bring on graduates and train them up because they won't stay paraplanner for long, because they'll just want to be an advisor, or they'll just leave. And actually that's not been my experience. We've put 20 odd people through our grad scheme and only one's gone to be an advisor. The rest have stayed with us. The vast majority has paraplanners, or Holly moved over into training. She now trains paraplanners through the Art of Finance. And it's the same with compliance. It was self-perpetuating, because compliance had that dirty aura around the word, and then you've got a traditional compliance officer delivering it. So how are you ever going to see it as anything other than what it is? And like I say, it was the myth that they wanted to sell, because then you felt scared and you'd pay them a fee to come and help you.
Yeah, so I think on that note, we'll all agree that Cathi has made compliance cool again. And so on that note, I'd really like to thank you for your time this evening, and thank you also to little boy for being such an angel, behaving.